What's up, guys? In today's video, I go over the Marshall 9000 series from the early 90s, so stay tuned. What is up, my little Cub Scouts? It's your boy, Torres. I was never a Cub Scout, so I don't know why I decided to call you guys Cub Scouts, because I'm sure some of you guys were Cub Scouts. Anyway, so in today's video, I go over my larger rack system, which I basically bought the Marshall 9000 series gear. So that includes the Marshall 9004 preamp, which is just solid state, along with the larger, I think it's the largest power amp that Marshall made at the time, which is the 9005 EL34, and that's 50-50, so 50 watts each channel, 2 channels because it's stereo. So, you know, as a kid in Brooklyn, you go and see bands, and, you know, for the most part, if you're seeing a bunch of hardcore bands at L'Amour or at CBGB's or ABC No Rio or Coney Island High, you usually find guitarists with some kind of a half stack, you know, head and cabinet. But every once in a while, you'll come across a touring band and they have giant rack systems. So it's interesting how, as far as the way you think, or at least the way I thought, it's just like, yo, when you make it as a guitarist, you shift from a head to a rack system, which of course, you know, fast forward years later, that clearly isn't the case, but I'm going back to when I was 14, 15. So in the 80s. So, you know, the dream of one day having a rack system is so, you know, maybe in 20 years I'll go ahead and get myself a rack system. And fast forward like 25 years, and suddenly there's a guy in my area in New York, and on Craigslist he posted that he was selling his Marshall 9005 power amp for $150. And I was just like, the guy lives like 2 miles away from me, so let me just hit him up and let him know that I want it. So I go to his house. One of the craziest experiences I've ever had. So this guy in his basement, first of all, you know, I end up having to call the guy. I'm like, dude, I have no idea where your house is. And he's like, oh, go back and you're going to see a little gravel road. And I'm on the phone with him the whole time, and he's like, there's a tree, turn right immediately after it, you're going to see the pebble road, and that's where I am back there. Mind you, this is like a suburban neighborhood, so there's a house there, there's a house there, there's a tree and a little driveway. That dude goes to the back and bends, and I'm just like, that's weird. Like, that's just, like, how is that even, like, normal here? And I go through this little dirt gravel road, bro, to a monster giant house. And I was just like, what the heck house is this? Why is this, like, mini mansion, you know, between these two, like, high ranch homes that are probably, I don't know, like $360,000 homes, and then there's like $1 million mansion in the back. So I'm like, this is weird. This is really weird. So I go into the house, and really super nice guy. He's like, oh, let me show you some of the other amps that I have, and takes me to his basement. I'm thinking I'm gonna get murdered. I'm looking around, Need to make sure I have something that I can grab and smash people's heads in. But I'm joking. He was a really nice guy, and he had 2 Randall RG100ES full stacks. And so he wants to show me how he can play. Dude, the guy cranks his Randall RG to like 8 in his basement with nothing in it but him standing and me sitting down on a little chair to the side of the amp. Bro, and he cranked it so loud like he was playing Madison Square Garden. I was like, I gotta go. I didn't need to go. I had to go because my ears were starting to bleed. But again, really nice guy, ended up picking that up. But now I'm just like, okay, well, I have the power amp. You know, I'm clearly going in this direction. So I end up buying the case, the rack shelf, enclosure. And it is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sorry, it's a 12 case. It's a 12 unit enclosure. And some guy on Facebook was selling it for $50. So, I was just like, hey, I'd love to buy it. I just got a Marshall power amp, and I just need something large enough because that actually takes up 4 spaces. So he's like, yeah, I'll meet you up in Saratoga Springs, New York. I'm like, okay, where do you want to meet? He's like, the Stewart's, which is a convenience store in the upstate New York area. Think of Wawa's in Florida or 7-Eleven in New York City. And meet up with him. Dude, I had no idea for the life of me that this thing was going to be that big. It's gigundo. It's 12 spaces. So, the guy shows up in a giant pickup truck, and I'm like, I didn't know that thing was that big. He's like, oh, yeah. I was like, okay. So I chucked that into the back seat, and one by one started buying the different components for it. So I wanted to stick to Marshall, so I ended up finding the Marshall 9004 preamp solid state for $125 that someone was just getting rid of. Like, it was some guy who was in a band in the 90s. I think he was a drummer, so he didn't really care. He's like, I just had this thing. If you want it, it's $125. I think it was just free shipping too. So I ended up getting that. I think they sell for like $200. So I kind of got, a good deal on that. And then I ended up getting the Digitech GSP-21, which when I was a kid was the multi-effects processor to buy. I bought that one for $25. I think it was like $2.99 back in the 90s. So that's how I started to put everything together. I wanted a little cabinet, so I have a little sliding drawer that takes up 2 spaces. So that is how I came about this giant monster of a rack. So should you go ahead and get yourself a rack? I don't know. That's kind of ridiculously old school, going one by one, whereas, it just seems like the industry is heading down the pedal world, right? So you can get a pedal power amp, a pedal preamp, and it's a lot smaller, it's a lot easier to lug around. But again, if you're in your 40s or 50s, that is what you have wanted for years since you were a little kid. And I actually have 2. I have the small one up top and the larger right below it. So let me stop yapping. I just wanted to go over that little story on how I came about getting a rack system. But let me go ahead and play through it. So let's have a listen. All right, little boys and girls. So I'm using my 1991 ESP M2 Custom. This one is the ESP with the Seymour Duncan Nazgul. Not to be confused with my other 1991 ESP M2 Custom with the Seymour Duncan Dimebucker. You know me and all my ESPs. So, I am using my Fort and Zool, which is a noise gate, along with my Seymour Duncan 805 overdrive, using it as a boost, so drive is at 0. The level is at noon, and it actually has the bass, mid, and treble little knobs, so I have that dialed into the tone that I like. Yeah. On the preamp, I actually have the gain at max because, again, it's older. It's from the early 90s. I want to say 90 was when they first came out with it. And by 92, they had switched out the 9004 preamp and got something else. And then the 9005 or the power amp ended up shifting to the gold, what was it? It's the gold face monoblock. So that was the original, and then they switched out and just changed the entire look to it. So let's go play a little bit so you guys can hear what it sounds like. There you have it. So, should you go ahead and start selling all your gear to get yourself a rack system? Probably not. I mean, it's more nostalgic than anything else. Again, it's something that I wanted when I was a kid. It's like, I'm a 14-year-old kid and my buddy has a Jackson and I can't afford one because I'm a broke Puerto Rican kid from Sunset Park, Brooklyn, which is why I own like 9 of them today. So, so guys, listen, thank you so much for watching. We just went through 2,800 subscribers. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Hit the subscribe button if you have not. Hopefully I made you guys laugh. Hopefully you learned something new and made a decision on whether or not you should get one of these amps that I have or a guitar, but this is fun for me. And if you guys listen, if you listen closely, you will notice that there is a slight difference in that recording, and that's because I forgot to use both mics. So I've been using, believe it or not, my Shure SM57 along with my Audio Technica AT2020, which kind of creates a great balance. And if you guys have listened to some of my videos, you know how the volume comes and goes. I know I've had a few of you guys send me hate messages and you're like, yo, what the hell is going on with that volume? I think I fixed it with the Audio Technica 2020. The problem is that I forgot to turn the Shure SM57 on. But lo and behold, in the next video, I will make sure that they are both on. So guys, again, thank you so much for watching. You guys are the absolute best. I have a bunch of things coming down the pike. So make sure you stay tuned. Hit the little bell if you haven't. And have a great weekend. Grill and barbecue your tail off. And as usual, I'll talk to you guys soon.